All right, so we're speaking about here in the middle of chapter 8, this idea that after death, a person needs to go through what he calls the purgatory of the grave to cleanse and purify it, right? Purify the soul. Now, the process of transitioning from this world to the next is a very taxing process on the soul, especially if the soul was so connected to this world, right? The more spiritual you are, the more heavenly you are, the smoother the transition to heaven, because the less you will have to upgrade yourself from this world to the next. You will already have been living in this heaven, so to speak, in the heavenly spheres. But the more materialistic a person is, the harder the transition is. Because again, these are two separate worlds. This world is a very materialistic world. It's a world in which our senses rule us, right? The five senses rule us. And the world to come has none of those five senses. I mean, it's all abstract, right? So maybe you can see, you can sense, or whatever it is, but not in a way that the body can do so. There is no body back in heaven. So the transition is very hard. Now, if the soul was contaminated by the three klipot, which is really the theme of this chapter, chapter 8, three klipot, which again refers to all of the forbidden parts of this world, that which God says do not do. If the soul was contaminated by that, then the soul needs to go through this, what he calls the purgatory of the grave, through this cleansing process, so that when it indeed arrives to the heavens, and at the same time when it dwells in the heavens, it doesn't have any of those stains that could in a way pull it down, or could in a way hinder on its rest, or on its even process of connecting to God, of basking in the light of God, which is what we believe heaven is in just one sentence. So therefore we are speaking about this now. This is true not just for the soul, as we mentioned, but also and mainly for the body. Right, the body and the soul are married to one another, so to speak. We have to work together in this world. For the soul to do good, for example, it needs a body, right? If I want to give charity, I need a hand to actually give charity. And say, so the body becomes a vehicle for the soul, and sometimes the soul becomes a vehicle for the body. Sometimes the body needs to eat, it needs to sleep. So the soul has to succumb to the desires of the body. There's nothing wrong with eating and sleeping. You need to. So they have to work hand in hand. They have to learn one another and work hand in hand. Now, because of that, tremendous influence, even after we pass, of the body on the soul. And I'm speaking in very mystical terms here, but this is really the Jewish belief. So because we were married for so long, the soul in a way still feels its body after it dies. Maybe not longly after it dies, but certainly shortly after it dies. It was married to it afterwards. It's like a marriage. If I separate from my spouse, I still feel my spouse, especially at the very beginning of my separation. Same year. So the body can affect the soul. If the body isn't holy, then it can affect the soul. And therefore, again, this purgatory of the grave, to cleanse and purify it, both the body and also to, in a way, release the soul, so that when the body is holy, then the holiness of the soul is intensified. Now its partner, so to speak, is holy, and therefore it can upgrade now to the heavens and really be in that holy atmosphere altogether without any hindrance. So that's really the Kabbalistic idea behind this what he calls the purgatory of the grave, or in Hebrew it's called kafakela, which is what the Tanya is speaking about here. Now, I will mention just one more thing and then we can continue, but that is that there is a way to also cleanse the body and cleanse the soul, as we've been speaking about, in this world. We don't have to wait for the purgatory of the grave after 120 years old. How do you do so? With a simple yet profound and maybe hard to achieve concept of teshuvah. If we do teshuvah, if we repent, or if we return and ask for forgiveness, absolutely, depending on the type of sin it is, then God cleans that stain automatically. That's what teshuvah does. So there is a possibility, and that's why the Talmud is very, very vocal about this, and the Mishnah has many teachings about this, that one should never give up on this idea of teshuvah, even if one is on his deathbed, even if one is breathing his last breaths, one should do teshuvah, because that teshuvah can clean him immediately and really help the smooth transition of the soul from this world to the next. So teshuvah has tremendous powers. Teshuvah is the ultimate, so to speak, washing machine for the soul and for the body too. You know, there's the great story about Rabbi Eliezer ben Durdia. I don't know if I think I've shared this with you, but the story that the Talmud uses in order to emphasize this point, that one should never give up on this idea of teshuvah, and that's the story of Rabbi Eliezer ben Durdia. He's called Rabbi. Who was he? He was, in today's term, you would call him a sex addict. He was a man who went to as many prostitutes as he could. And he boasted about it. I went to every prostitute in town. And one day someone told him, there's a prostitute you didn't go to, and she lives 7 mountains away from you. He says, oh, really? I'm going to go to her. And he started climbing the mountains. And when we reached the peak of the 7th mountain, he caught himself and he said, gosh, I've wasted my life. I've contaminated my life. And as the Talmud says, he buried his face in between his knees and he started to weep. And he wept so strongly and so earnestly that his soul left him. He expired. And he died at that moment. And at the moment of his death, a heavenly voice came out, as the Talmud continues to say, bat kol, and says, Rabbi, calling him Rabbi, Rabbi Eliezer ben Durdia, you're welcome in the world to come. Because of that teshuvah. Now, it's not an easy teshuvah to attain. Look, the man expired. But again, emphasizes the point that teshuvah can do it, can do what we're speaking about. We don't have to wait for that very last moment.
If he didn't weep, he may not have died.
That's it. Exactly. That's right.
Sorry about that.
No, good one. All right. Thank you, William. I love your humor. That's great. Okay. So let's continue. Let's continue exactly where you said we left off, Margot, at the bottom of page 211, right here, right?
Correct.
So please, does anyone want to read?
I'll read if you want.
Okay, please. Thank you.
Okay. In our experience, we know this as the agony of memory. Remembering and re-experiencing past traumas is a major factor in much of our spiritual suffering. Our ability to forget past suffering is a defense mechanism, enabling us to continue living and carry on in the future. In the hollow of the sling, the soul is compelled to review its past life and relive it, this time not as a participant, but merely as an objective observer. This process, apart from the pain it brings, is a process of purification, as in a very different way is psychoanalysis, of recalling and reviewing the past in a new light.
Right. I just want to say something because, you know, we can philosophically debate about this. Is memory a good thing? Is memory good? Because if I remember everything, I'll never be able to embrace the newness of the day. I'm still pulled by the past. Right? On the other hand, it's good because it serves some very vital needs, right? If I don't remember myself yesterday, how can I grow today? If I don't remember my children, if I don't remember the names of my children, I'm in deep trouble. So you need memory. Now, so part of it is good, a part of it is bad. And that's the beauty of forgetfulness. See, forgetfulness can be very good. Of course, in small dosage, but still very good. Unfortunately, as we say in the prayer of the high holidays, we say it in the prayers of Rosh Hashanah, that's coming up, by the way, in a month and a half, even less than a month and a half. But we say that there is nothing forgotten in front of the throne of God. There is no forgetfulness. God remembers everything. Now that's quite I don't know. At least to me, it fills me with this awe gosh, all right, I may have forgotten what I did yesterday. Thank God, because it's not pulling me back. I remember what I did yesterday might not have been positive. So thank God I forgot, but God doesn't forget anything. And one day I'll have to face that God who will bring me all of the collections of my deeds that I may have forgotten. And that's really what the purgatory of the grave is. You may have forgotten something, and it's good, because a little bit of forgetfulness, as we said in life, is good. But God doesn't forget anything. And that's why, by the way, we said on Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment. It's to infuse this little awe towards our lives. Hey, be careful with what you do, because as the ethics of our fathers also says, Kol ma'asecha b'sefer nichtavim. All of your deeds are written in a book. And that's the book we speak about in Rosh Hashanah, book of our deeds. Now, that also comes to teach us that we have to be cognizant of what we are doing, because we might think it's a small thing. Oh, it's just tiny, and tomorrow it's gone. But it's not, because it stays there forever. Everything is permanent. Now again, teshuvah erases that which we did. That's the power of teshuvah. It erases it even from the books of God. But if we don't do teshuvah properly, then it's remembered. So I don't mean to depress you, and I don't mean to depress myself. But by the way, that's why I know of many Hasidic Jews, especially in the past, there are many stories about that used to take down the account of every single one of their deeds every day. I did this and I did this. And before going to sleep, before the bedtime Shema, which is really part of the reason we say the bedtime Shema, they would write down, okay, I did all of this today. What do I regret and what don't I regret? What do I want to continue taking into my life tomorrow, the next day, and the day after? And what do I want to leave behind? What am I doing teshuvah for? It's a good exercise if we really want to be self-reflective, and at the same time, if we really want to grow. And at the same time, it will erase those misdeeds from the book of God himself. But it emphasizes that point too, which is something that we ought to take into account.
Can we ever know if we've done enough teshuvah? Really?
That's a great question. That's a great question. As Rabbi Steinsaltz would put it, I think I mentioned this also, the sins that we did not forget about, that bother us, are the sins that God forgave us about. Because the fact that they bother us and we haven't forgotten them means that we really have remorse towards them. But the sins that we did forget are the sins that maybe that teshuvah wasn't enough. I'm just using Rabbi Steinsaltz's perspective here, but I do believe that we also say this, not just during the high holidays. We say this all the time, Kel Rachum Hashem, that God is a compassionate God. And that if we come to him with earnestness, then God forgives. And even those sins that we'll forget about tomorrow or the next year or the next decade. So I do believe in the power of teshuvah, and I think that, yes, again, Rachmana liba bae, also the Talmud says, God wants the heart. If you do it from your heart, and you have that remorse from your heart, and of course, you don't repeat it, right? Because that's the ultimate test. When you have an inclination again, and you don't repeat it, that's when you really did teshuvah. So if you've achieved that, then yes, then teshuvah is enough. Yeah.
Rabbi, how much, I don't know how to ask this. It's been on my mind as you've been saying this, but a lot of the things that I do, especially in Judaism, are coming to me from two people in my past, and my feeling of what they would want me to do and what they would, they're still there. I don't know how, I mean, one of course is my uncle, the rabbi, and the other is my father. And how would you work that into what you're talking about?
Right. And I think that's great, because the way we can really grow in life and be on that golden path, right, in which we have deeds that are completely consistent with our soul and keep us far away from any type of transgression is indeed by having voices that are greater than us, holier than us, that serve as our GPS. So before you do anything, you ask yourself, what would that person want me to do? I very often ask that, regarding Rabbi Stein, what would Rabbi Steinmetz want me to do? I have the Lubavitcher Rebbe in mind also. What would the Rebbe want me to do? My great-grandfather in mind. I think everyone should have those voices in them. What would they want me to do? Because in a way, they serve as our GPS. Now, we have to be careful because we have to be completely nullified to those voices, right? Because it's very easy to say, oh, I'm sure he would want me to do this, and not realizing that my ego is involved in this. I'm actually distorting their voice, and just to make it convenient for me, right? I have to be nullified to their voice, meaning that I have to be ready to hear an answer that won't be convenient for me, that will push me outside of my comfort zone. Yet you do them anyhow, right? That's because, again, they are your GPS. And very often your GPS will push you to the streets and to the avenues that you don't want to go to. But if you are going to follow a right path in life and the path of that's, again, consistent with your soul, then you're going to have to make those efforts. That's the only way to grow, really, to come out of your comfort zone. So anyhow, you have to be nullified to those voices. You have to really listen to them without any iota of your ego involved. But you're right. I think everyone should have those voices. And dare I add, not just voices from the dead, but also the voices from the living. I think we all need a selech harav. The ethics of our fathers tells us, make for yourself a teacher, a mentor, someone that can guide you. I know I miss Rabbi Steinsaltz terribly. Today's his Yortzeit is mentioned. And he was my mentor, and we would speak at least every 2 weeks. And really, he would guide me in many details of my life and my collective life too. But ever since he passed, I have to, not even close to Rabbi Steinsaltz, but I have someone else that I go to. And I think that also enables us to look at things objectively, right? Without ego, but also from a bird's eye view, so to speak, right? Where people can see the entire picture. It's just like a painting. If I'm too close to the painting, I can't see it. And sometimes I'm too close to myself, so I can't see myself. So I have to remove that painting a little bit, and then I can try and see it. And those people can do that for us. So
Rabbi, that's why we come to you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. By the way, that's why I want to emphasize the teaching that we just quoted from the Ethics of Our Fathers. It says "Aselech harav," which means make for yourself a teacher. It's interesting, the words that are chosen doesn't say choose for yourself a teacher. Bechar lecharav in Hebrew. It doesn't even say that you should accept upon yourself a teacher. Or kabel alecharav. It says aseh, which means really impose on yourself a teacher. Why? That's because sometimes you won't be happy with what he or she tells you. But if it's a real teacher, you're going to impose it on yourself. You're going to do it anyhow, because you're realizing that they are seeing the full picture that you may not be seeing. By the way, the Kabbalah speaks a lot about this idea. That is that once a person has accepted upon himself a teacher, then the teacher becomes a channel for God's voice to that person. And that acceptance, that aselech harav, really is what opens up the channel for God's voice to that person. So the teacher is not even saying his own words. He's really only conveying the words of God. But God wanted that person who's accepting those teachings now, that guidance from the teacher. God wanted that person to first nullify his ego. Once you've nullified your ego, then you're ready to be receptive for the word of God, which is now being channeled by the teacher. How do you nullify your ego? By imposing upon yourself a teacher. Once you've nullified your ego in that way, then your teacher can be a conveyor of God's voice. So that's how powerful it is. That's really how important it is. But again, it could be the voices of the past, of people that are not among us physically. And I would encourage people to have people from the living too. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other comments, questions? We can continue. No? All right. Let's continue then a little bit more. All souls, except for those. Does anyone want to read? That's Margot. You want to continue?
Sure, I'll
Good.
continue. I'll continue.
Thank you.
All souls, except for those who never involve themselves in the mundane aspects of this world, such as Rabbi Judah the Prince, our holy master, must undergo the process of being hurled in the hollow of the sling. This is not a punishment per se, but rather a technical, almost automatic stage in the soul's journey to a higher world. A soul that formed an attachment to frivolous things while in the body remains attached to them also when it leaves it, and in the state it cannot enter Gan Eden, paradise. The nature of Gan Eden is that one enjoys the glow of the divine presence, the unpurified soul. Even if it were smuggled into Gan Eden, one would find the experience meaningless, as one cannot enjoy divinity when one's enjoyment still lies in earthly matters.
Right. Continue this. There's a great story here, so just continue.
Okay, the author's grandson, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, known as Tzmach Tzedek, told the story of a wagon driver who performed a great mitzvah and saved the life of a Jew. When this man died, the heavenly court did not know how to reward him. He had performed a great mitzvah, but being a boor and a very coarse man, he would not be able to appreciate the spiritual pleasures of Gan Eden as tzaddikim do. So they decided to ask him what he would like. He asked for a new wagon with 6 mighty horses. To this day, he drives this wagon with its 6 horses along a straight, smooth road to infinity.
Right. So there you go. I mean, he did a great mitzvah, but in order to appreciate the pleasures of Gan Eden and the how does he call it here, the glow of the divine presence, and you have to be a little more refined than the desires of a wagon driver to have a horse with 6 wagon with 6 mighty horses, and that is achieved particularly through, again, the purgatory of the grave, or that transitional stage in which we see the movie of our lives. And that's not there to punish us, God forbid, and to say, hey, look what you did, hey, this. It's really there to give us that divine perspective. Once we have that divine perspective, then we can enjoy the divine glow. Without the divine perspective, if we are just connected, all we know of and think of and yearn for is a wagon and 6 horses, then we'll never be able really to upgrade. So and again, that's really the ultimate purpose. I just want to add one layer to that, and that is that, again, we're speaking about what is to be after 120 years old, but this can also happen to, and I think that's the goal really of Rabbi Stern's words and the Tanya's words also. It's not to frighten us and say, hey, look what's going to happen to you after 120 years old, but it's really to emphasize this idea that we can achieve this now. If all we have today and all we think of today and all we yearn for today and all we are immersed in today is a wagon and 6 horses, then maybe it's time to update the system. You can do it today. You don't have to wait until 120. And once you've updated that system, then you'll be more ready. And you shouldn't do it for what is happening in 120. Do it for the divine glow in this world. You don't have to wait for the divine glow in the world to come. Do it for today. I mean, what a limiting life it is to have just where your only existence is a wagon and six horses. By the way, we're talking about a wagon and 6 horses, and it makes us laugh because it's a relic of the past. But a wagon and 6 horses can very well be a Ferrari and 6 drivers. You could just switch the names. And some people, that's all they have, a Ferrari and 6 drivers. All right, good. Well done. Is that what life is all about? Now you can transition today. You don't have to wait until 120. So that's the purpose. It's not the Tanya, especially. I know the Rabbi Shneur Zalman Vliadi was not at all into that philosophy of, wait until the world to come. No, We have a world that is right here in front of our eyes that we have to live today. And by the way, when Mashiach comes, there won't be a world to come. The world to come will come down to this world. This world is really where we can achieve the most. So focus on today. And you want for a Ferrari and 6 drivers, good for you. But there's more to that. And the more you give, the more also your soul will feel that divine glow. The more you take, the less it can feel that divine glow. So I think that's the big idea. And I want to conclude on that note because first time is up, but also I think that was really Rabbi Stein's ultimate legacy. Rabbi Stein also did so much. He wanted to let my people know it, and he devoted his life to it. He knew not one day of vacation, not one day of sleep. I would call him all the time at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. But he was a man who was obsessed with giving, obsessed with accessing other people's souls. And therefore, his life really continues on to live and live and live and live forever in the many hearts and many souls that he touched and that he continues to touch through his teachings and through his books and through all the good deeds that he did. And that should be a model for all of us. We don't have to wait until 120 and be stuck there with a Ferrari and 6 drivers. We can draw down the divine glow, as is mentioned here, even today. And how do we do so? Really being soul-focused, other-oriented, and by asking what the greats would have wanted from us, not what we want from ourselves.